Hey class, this is the week 11 lesson for Web Design 110, and today we're going to be learning how to use jQuery to set up a slideshow plugin. So there's quite a few slideshows out there, but one of the coolest ones I've seen out there is the Nivo Slider, and mainly because, well, it has all the components that I like. It has sort of the thumbnails, or I guess buttons you can use to activate the different slides, and it also has subtitles here where you can actually place HTML, such as links. Also, we've got this left and right navigation buttons that appear when you roll over it, and those also act to advance the slides. It also has this really cool fading and slice, sort of like a Venetian blind effect going on. They also have really good documentation on their site. They pretty much explain everything as to how to set it up, from the CSS to the HTML to the JavaScript. And as you can see here, these are all options that you can set up within the JavaScript here. So none of these are really necessary, but you can really take the customization as far as you want by setting up these different variables. And they also list out the different effects here, and then they also give some advanced usage kind of tutorials here. We're not really going to get super advanced with this lesson. Our main goal is just to be able to get it set up and working with some of our own custom images, and that's going to require us getting into Photoshop just a little bit to crop images and set them up. So and then, yeah, they also have support here if you have any additional trouble. So the first thing we want to do is just download it. So you can click here. It'll save it as a zip file. So go ahead and tell it, if you're using Mac, tell it to open with Archive Utility, and that's going to decompress it for you. Yours might place it in the Downloads folder or on the desktop. I've already downloaded mine to the desktop. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new project folder, and I'm just going to call it Nivo Project. You can name it whatever you want, and I'm going to place this folder in there. And as you can see, what they've included, they have the Nivo Slider JavaScript file. So this is all the JavaScript that's running. In fact, this is actually jQuery, and jQuery is obviously running on top of JavaScript, so sort of like a framework within a framework. And this sort of has everything in it. And then we've got the CSS that's involved to make this slideshow run, licensing, telling you what you can use it for, and then they've included a demo. So if you open this up, it's so it's actually a working version of the slider. So you can either use that or take bits and pieces of their code. But just in terms of what they include, they've got this style sheet here, which if we look in the source code, let's see, the style.css, this mainly has to do with the page itself. So we don't necessarily need this unless we're going to imitate this page. And let's see, let me open this back up. And they also have the Nivo Slider CSS, and that's the CSS that actually makes the slideshow run. And you'll notice here there's a ... That always means in a file path that you're moving up one folder level. So what we're viewing here, you can see in the file path here, we've got the folder I created called Nivo Project, and inside of that there's the Nivo Slider, which is what we downloaded. Inside of that there's another folder called Demo, and inside of that there's an HTML file called demo.html. So in relation to demo.html, on the same level we have style.css, which was what's making this page appear as it does, and then Remember, from the dot slash, we're going up one level from where this file is up to here, and then we've got the Nivo Slider CSS. And let's see what else they're including. So here, this div right here with an ID of slider and a class of Nivo Slider. From the JavaScript running here, you can see that the pound or the number sign slider, which is something with an ID of slider, which is this right here, dot Nivo Slider. So that's not the same as in CSS where you're calling the class of something with a period. This is in JavaScript, the dot and then the name is actually running the Nivo Slider JavaScript plugin. So it's saying run this plugin on this item. And that's pretty much all the customization that they're adding to this. You'll see down here we've got in the folder scripts jQuery min.js. So since this is running on jQuery, we have to include that file. So you'll see from demo we've got scripts jQuery. So scripts jQuery. And then below that we've got the nivo.slider.pack.js. And what folder was that in? Oh, that's again dot slash. So we're going up one level, and this is the one that it's referring to. So those are the main components, and then within this div, which is the slider div, we've got the Toy Story image. So if we click on that, this is what it's referring to. And then right below it, we've got some, we've got a link here. So actually, the up. So actually, let's take a look at this. When we click on here, yeah, it takes us to this address, Dev7 Studios. And so you'll see right here, Dev7 Studios, that's where that link took us. So if you want any of the images to link to somewhere, you just wrap them in an A tag. And then we've got an image, another image, the wally.jpg. That should be the third one. So here it is. So if we click this, Wally. And finally we've got Nemo. And then in the title space, we've got this number sign HTML caption. Down here you'll see we've got a div with an ID of HTML caption. So for the title, it's actually just referring to this div. And you'll see this div also has a class of Nivo HTML caption. So that's telling the JavaScript, take this div and use it as a caption. Don't get confused with something else. So if we were to have a caption for all four of these images, we would just repeat this code right here, and we would keep the class the same because that controls the functionality, but then we would replace the ID so that it knows what to pull up inside of the title. So as you'll see under Nemo, we've got this is an example of HTML caption with a link, and if we check it out on here, this is an example of HTML with a link, and that link doesn't really go anywhere. It's just this $sign or number sign. And then all that is wrapped inside of a div with an ID of wrapper, which isn't really necessary for it to run. That's completely just for styling purposes. So just to recap, we've got our HTML body, we've got the CSS to run the slideshow, we've got the CSS for the page, to get this background appearance and everything. We've got this wrapper, which is just for styling and positioning. And then they've got this link here, which, let me see here. Okay, so this is that link. Let me minimize that. Okay. So this link is this thing right here. And then we've got the actual slideshow component. And actually this is the slider wrapper. So it's wrapper, then slider wrapper, and then slider is the actual slideshow with a class of Nivo Slider. And then we've got the list of images. One of them is wrapped in a link. The other has a caption. All the captions are stored below, but they can actually be placed anywhere. And then we've got the call to the jQuery library, and then the call to the slider, I guess just the code that makes it run. And then we do one last JavaScript call, which is where we tell it what to apply this code and this code to. And in this case, it's this right here. So let's try that out. Rather than just steal all their code, like instead of just taking this page and modifying it, I'm just going to start a brand new page, just so we can get practice working with relative links to files and everything like that. So, see, I'll go ahead and use Dreamweaver. I'm going to close out these. Alright, so I'm going to create new HTML. They've started us off with some code here. Let's just change the title here to Nivo Slider Test. And you'll see that updates it here in the code. Alright, so first of all, we need to link to, well, first of all, we need to save it so that we can get our links relative. Also, I'm just going to delete this because it's not necessary, and I'm going to delete that. Okay, and we can also delete that. I just want to keep this page really simple and basic so we don't have any confusion. Alright, so I'm going to go to File, Save As. And it's thinking. Here it goes. Okay. We're just going to call this index.html. And I'm going to go to, well, you can actually get to the desktop from here. So under Places, Windows might be a little different. And I'm going to go to my Nivo project. And I'm actually going to create a new folder on my own, and I'm just going to name it JEarly Nivo. And that's just so I'm starting from scratch. I don't want to get confused with any of the files here. So I'm going to go ahead and save it as index.html. And now we're ready to get started. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm just going to grab the files that I need. So I need the Nivo Slider CSS, I need the slider jQuery, and they have two here. I'm not exactly sure why they have two, but I'm just going to copy these over. And in Apple, to do that, you just hold down the Option key and drag, and it'll make a copy of it. And then I'm going to go into the demo, and let's see here. Just grab the jQuery library and copy it. And those should be the only files that we need. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it Assets. Another folder inside of there called CSS, and then another folder called JS. And actually, I want these on the same level. I'm going to take these two and drag them into JS, and I'm going to take this and drag it into CSS. Just keep everything nice and organized. And then I'm actually going to want a folder for my slideshow images. So, images. Okay, so in order for us to get the slideshow to work, we actually need some images to slide. Now, this is entirely up to you what you use. I don't want you to use the images that they have here already, because in any real situation, you're going to be using your own. So, you're welcome to choose any images you want. I would just recommend going to Flickr or some other site. So let's actually do that. So I'm going to go to flickr.com. And if you don't know about Flickr, it's a really good place to get cool images, a lot better than Google Images, I think. But just don't use any for commercial purposes because most of these are copyrighted. So I'm going to make my slideshow about comics. So let's see what they have here. Not really happy with the results. Or let me see. Maybe I'll just do it on Batman. You know what? Actually, let's go with Google Images. So google.com. Now, I'm going to have you guys pick your own images. This is just what I'm doing for the demo. So try to come up with your own theme, whatever. So here's a cool image. And you're going to want images that are a good width. So I'm actually going to inspect that element to see how big it is. Let's see here. Okay, so that's 618 by 246. Now we actually don't have to make it this size. We can make it whatever size we want as long as they're all consistent. So I'm going to go ahead and save this image as, and I'm going to go into my Nivo project, JEarly Nivo, Assets, Images, and then I'm going to create one more folder in here called slide-images. And that's to keep it separate from all the Nivo Slider images. So Wolverine. Okay, I'm gonna do a total of 4. So we've got Wolverine. Let's get Daredevil here. Oops, I'm gonna save image as Daredevil. Like Spider-Man, so save image. Spider-Man, and one more. Captain America. Okay, let me make sure these are all working right. And not all these have .jpeg on them, and that might cause some problems, so I'm going to add .jpeg. Add. Okay, so we got those 4 images. All right, good. Now, one more thing I forgot to copy over, and that is the actual images they use for their slideshow. So you'll see here they've got the arrows, they've got their background, the bullets, this thing. So this thing isn't really necessary. And then we've got the loader, and then their slideshow images. So the only things we're really going to need are the loader, the bullets, the arrows, and the background. So I'm going to copy these over. Into images. And there we go. All right, now we're ready to go. So inside of here, first thing we need to do is link to our CSS file. So the code for that is link href equals, and it's going to let me browse, and it's all relative to this file. So I'm going to go in CSS, Nivo Slider. There it is. It wrote out the path for me. And rel equals style sheet. That part is necessary. And then close it out. I think we might need to type equals text / CSS. Okay, and now we're going to actually have the slideshow. So div with an ID of slider. And inside of there, we're going to have our 4 images. So in Dreamweaver, there's a hotkey. You can press Command Option I, and that's going to insert an image for you. The other way you can do it is go to Insert Image, or you can just start typing img source equals and then browse. So we're going to go to Slide Images, Captain America. That's it. And then actually for title, I'm actually going to do an experiment. In the demo they had for the title, it had it referring to another div. I'm going to see if it'll just take the text straight like that. And then I'm just going to copy and paste this 4 times to save myself some typing, and then I'm going to type in the names of the other images. So we had Captain America, and then we've got Daredevil, then we've got Spider-Man, and Wolverine. And I obviously need to change these out. So Daredevil, Spider-Man, and for this one, I'm actually going to do like the demo and have it pull from a separate div. So I'm going to call this one Wolverine with this number sign here. Okay, so we got those images, and then now I'm actually going to create a div with an ID of Wolverine, and then a class of Nivo caption. And inside of here, I can place HTML. So I'm going to type something like, click this link to go to the Wolverine fan page. And then right here, click this link. I'm going to look up some Wolverine fan page. So Wolverine fan page. And you can make it whatever link you want. And so I'm just going to go with the top link. Copy this. And here. Sometimes you'll have to hit that refresh button. So here, for the link, I'm just going to paste that address in there. And for the target, I always like to make it blank if it's taking us to a different page. Okay, so that's our caption. And okay, and then lastly, we're going to include our JavaScript links. So script source equals browse. I'm going to go into JS, pull up our jQuery library. Type equals text / JavaScript. For some reason it stopped. Text / yeah. Okay, and then I'm just going to do the same thing. Script source equals, I'm going to get that Nivo pack. Type equals text / JavaScript. And then for the final script tag is where I'm going to place my, actually I'm not going to connect to a source, I'm actually just going to type the JavaScript right in there. So this is where I type my command and where I tell it which div to apply it to. So it's going to be, I need a quote, number sign, slider, which is referring to this, dot Nivo Slider, I think is the command, but I'm just going to need to double check with their code to make sure I typed that right. Yep, and so slider is actually capitalized. And then in these parentheses is where I'm going to put any options that I want. Right now I don't have any, so that's going to be it. And that should be it. Now there is this code right here, but it might not be absolutely necessary. Basically it's saying once the window has loaded, run this JavaScript, but since we're placing it at the bottom, it may not be necessary, but it kind of behaves differently depending on the browser. So I'm just going to test it out. And this is underlined for some reason. Found one error. Okay. So I'm going to save this. And I'm just going to test it out. Now there's probably going to be some errors, but we can work those out. So I'm going to go here, preview in Firefox, see how it goes. Okay, click my next button. Okay. So since I didn't set any boundaries for the actual slideshow, it's using the whole window to run it. And then also, we haven't replaced these bullets or these numbers with bullets yet. So that's where the CSS is going to come into handy. But we can see that the JavaScript is running, which is good. So, and actually let me make sure, that might be why this was underlined, because the CSS wasn't running. So, let me double check. href equals asset CSS, blah, blah, blah. That looks right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull up their demo, and in fact, I'm just going to copy this line and paste it. Except the href is going to need to change to our CSS file. So browse, go to the CSS Nivo Slider. Let's see if that fixes things at all. Okay, so it did add this caption down here, and like I was guessing earlier, I was seeing if the title would just be placed down here without needing this, and it did. Okay, so now let's just add some styling. I'm actually going to refer to their style sheet and see how they did theirs. So the body, all this stuff is normal. Caption. Okay. So where it says custom slider styles, I'm just going to copy there all the way down to here, because that's all referring to the slider itself. And I'm actually going to create a new style sheet. So I just press Command N, clicks CSS, create, and I'm just going to paste it all in there. And then I'm going to save this as custom.css, assets, and then into the CSS. Now the thing you need to be careful of is now that we've saved this in that specific folder, all these file paths are going to need to be changed to reflect its relationship, or its relative location. So the background is images/slider. So since our CSS custom is here and our background is here, we're actually going to have to use that ... to go up one level and then go back down into images and then slider. And same with this one. So that's for the loading .gif right here. And this is for the bullets, so these things, and the arrows. Now let's save that, and then let's link to that file. So I'm actually just going to copy this line, paste it, and instead of Nivo Slider, I'm just going to type custom, and that's it. So let me test this out. Okay, so it's a little better, but it's still having some problems. So it's swapped out the bullets, and let's see, you probably can't see the arrow icons since they're white. We've got a white background. But let me figure out what the problem is. Background. Oh, slider wrapper. That's because we don't have a slider wrapper element. So let's actually, in Dreamweaver, you can actually highlight some text, some code. So I'm actually clicking and dragging on these numbers here. You can actually do that in most other code editing programs, and it'll highlight the whole line. And then in Dreamweaver, you can hit Command T and then type div id equals slider wrapper and hit enter. And that's going to wrap the whole thing in another div with that name. Now if you're not using Dreamweaver, you're going to have to type the opening tag here and then type the closing tag down here. So let's save this. Let's go back, refresh, see how it's looking. Still looking kind of wonky. Okay, I'm going to put it on pause and figure out what the problem is, and then we'll get right back. Okay, so I'm back. I figured out what the issue is, and it's actually what I had talked about at the beginning of the lesson, and that's that we actually do need to resize our images. And as it started out, the Daredevil image was actually way bigger than everything else, and that's what was causing it all to stretch out like crazy. The other thing that wasn't quite working was that HTML caption that I wanted was actually showing up here, and there was a couple things that I did wrong with that. And that's that I actually did need to place it outside of this slider div right here, so I can't have it inside. And then the other thing is I just put Nivo-caption. It actually needs to be Nivo-HTML-caption in order for it to work right. So let's go and resize those images. So I've already resized them here, but what I've done is just I created a brand new document with a custom size that I wanted. So in the case of these, based on what their original resolution was, I had to have it a width of 600 by 267 because some of the images were a little smaller. So create a new image, and then what you'll want to do is go into your images, open them all up in Photoshop. So I just click them and drag them into Photoshop and let go. And so I've got them all here in tabs. And then what you do is press Command A, or in Windows it'll be Control A. and select JPEG and save. And navigate to the new folder and save them in here. And so if you haven't already, let's go back. Well, first of all these file paths were originally slide-images, so I had to add the dash resized since they're all in a new folder. But then the last part, the like Wolverine.jpg and all that, those are going to stay the same, unless you like mistype them. And a quick way to replace all these names, and actually I'm just going to go ahead and show you. So this is how they were named earlier. If I wanted to add dash resized at the end of all these, I'm going to highlight this, press Command F for find, or in Windows it's Control F, and I have that. And then down in replace, I'm going to have the same thing except dash resized, and then click replace all, and that's a quick way of replacing repetitive code. So that's been replaced, and then for this caption, we're gonna want to change it from class Nivo-caption to Nivo-HTML caption, and we're gonna want to move actually just this outside of, so before it was here, we want to move it just outside. And you'll want to be really careful with this. So I also added a wrapper just in case that was a problem, except I don't think I really needed it. So let me delete that, see if it still runs. And it still runs fine. Now you'll notice this caption's running a little over the edge. That may be because I didn't set the CSS to equal the size of these images. So under custom, right here, slider wrapper, I'm going to change that to what I have the images as. So mine, yours might be different, but mine's 600 by 267. So I'm going to make the width 600 and the height 267. Margin 0, auto, padding, top, margin top. And then slider, I'm going to make that the same thing too. So 600 and then 267. Now let's see if that fixes it. Yep, and that fixed it, except it moved it over. And I guess that's because I changed the width of the main wrapper. So let's see, I'll just change that to whatever it was, 998, and then just replace this. 600 by 6 or by 267. Okay, so now everything fits perfectly. I've got these buttons here. We've got these arrows. And we've got a working slideshow. So for your homework, I would like you to create a slideshow like this, except use 4 of your own custom images. Make sure that you crop them to be all the same size, and then make sure that you go into this custom CSS file, and not on the slider wrapper, but on the actual slider, you want to make sure the width and height are custom to match your images. And I'd like you to have captions for all 4 of them, and then on one of them I'd like you to have a caption with HTML, like with a link or something. Okay, so enjoy, have fun, email me if you have any questions. Thank you.